Awesome. So I think we're waiting on maybe one or two others, but I think we can actually start kicking off. So welcome back, everyone, and welcome to part two, which is now Beat the Hacker rather than Be the Hacker, of course. So before I hand back over to Radhika and Nick, just wanted to raise a very quick point. Following this session, there is a quick feedback form that we would really love you guys to, of course, fill out. So once the session has ended, I'll throw up a quick QR code and also post the link into the chat. If you guys can fill it out, it's definitely going to be much appreciated. Feedback on these sessions and how we can improve them moving forward is always going to be key. So without taking up any more time and with getting much more hands-on with the Sophos side, Radhika, Nick, do you want to take over?
Sure, Janari. Thank you so much, and welcome back, everybody. Great to have all of you and see you again. So here are a few things that have been added since yesterday. So just to introduce while Stephen is joining in as well. So now we have something called a session control. So you should be able to see controls such as yes, no, go slower, and go faster in your participant screen. So please make sure to use them in case you have any challenges running through to day 2, which is going to be around being the defenders. So please help us with the tick mark to say that yes, we are with you. And for anything, for any challenges, help us with a no. And of course, go slower, go faster is something that can definitely help us out. So awesome. With that, let us begin from where we left off as hackers yesterday. So here's what we did yesterday. We had a Kali Linux machine and we did a port scan on an nmap to check as to which ports are actually open against the victim machine. And we did find out that there were a couple of ports open, which included port 80 and port 22. While we came to know that port 80 was open, there were some vulnerabilities that we had exploited yesterday. One amongst them was SSRF. So using the SSRF, we found that there was a role attached to it. While role are temporary credentials, we further went into the environment to check whether these roles are further attached to either an S3 or an Lambda. Further going down the line, we found that yes, it was attached to a Lambda function. And as luck would really have it, we were very, very lucky to have some EC2 hard-coded credentials into our Lambda function. And that is where we actually got our permanent credentials. We also saw that there was a policy directly attached to it, which had around 4 policy versions lying around. And we did check that there was a permission of IAM set default version, which was enabled. And using that flag, we actually checked for the various versions of policies available. And we used the least restrictive policy and assigned it to this user.
Radhika, sorry, can I just chip in here? Are you expecting people to be able to see a slide at the minute? I don't think you're sharing your screen.
Oh, yes. I am very sorry.
No, it's fine. It's not a problem. I just, in case people were hoping to see, if you were hoping people could see a slide that you've got up at the minute.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
No, you're right.
Great. So this was where we were.
Perfect. Thank you.
So are we able to see this slide now, Nick?
Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. So this is where we were. We got the Lambda, we got a permanent user credential attached to it. There were policy versions lying around, and we did use one of the policy versions to escalate privilege. And once we did that, we found one of the buckets in capital 2 company. And we copied the contents of this S3 bucket into a Kali Linux machine. So congratulations. It was a great day yesterday where we all got to be attackers, but today we're going to be the good guy and a good girl and really help in what a defender would actually do. So of course, it's not about the Defender game that we really played in 90s, but this is about being the defenders of security. So Sophos Cloud Optix is of course a CSPM product, which is a cloud security posture management as defined by Gartner. So it'll help you in mitigating major challenges that a customer faces in the cloud, which is of course to check and inventorize a multi-cloud environment, because of course nobody has their everything in one place, so they have multiple clouds to look into. Multiple clouds meaning multiple pair of eyes to look at each of it. So Sophos Cloud Optix helps you in inventorizing all your cloud at one place. Governance and compliance is always a challenge in cloud because of its changing nature. So Cloud Optix would also help you in checking as to which of your inventory resources are under compliance and what are not. The other thing is using drift detection. You can also integrate your DevSecOps IAC codes into Sophos Cloud Optix, and you can actually spot a misconfiguration as early on as in a CloudFormation template while it is either a CFT or while it is in form of a Terraform. So not just for AWS, it's also available for Azure in form of ARM, yeah, ARM scripts for Azure. So Sophos Cloud Optix would actually help you in, really answering to tough challenges that anyone in cloud really faces. So today we are actually going to use this tool and just address some questions around, how could a defender would have spotted a vulnerability such as the one that we had used yesterday? What would have been the indicators of compromise to detect as to what was happening, and also to check for forensics after the attack had taken place? So these are the major questions that we're going to answer today, being the defenders. So of course, the first part of being the defender is of course logging on to your Sophos central account. I think we've all got email from Bytes regarding the credentials. So please use the credential email and navigate to https central.sophos.com, and let me run you through with it. So essentially, navigate to central.sophos.com, enter your credentials, the email address and the password that has been provided in the credentials email, and click on Cloud Optix. So this is a pane of navigation for our Cloud Optix product. So if you've all reached to this place, can we please have a check mark to let us know that we are all together at this point? Or if there are any challenges regarding credentials, please feel free to put that in chat and we can definitely look into it.
All looking good, Radhika, this side. I think Bahar, we've got Bahar and Peter not yet logged in. I think they're probably just in the process, but there's no problems on the chat.
Perfect. Let me know, Nick, if there's anything that we can address. So so of course, this is our Sophos Cloud Optix navigation pane. Now, the first step would, of course, be to onboard your environment. And this is actually the page where we onboard our environments. It is as simple as going to add new environment and selecting the cloud that you would want to onboard to, which could be AWS, Azure, GCP, and also IAC environments, and Kubernetes, of course. So this is where we actually onboard all of our clouds. You would be able to see your own particular cloud, but this being the master deck, so I would have access to all the trainee accounts. And once you get an active and a success status against your account, this actually means that your AWS account is active, and also that your Optix is able to, talk to uh, the AWS account. So this is essentially what active and success really mean. Um, all right. So once the environments are all onboarded, you would be able to see all your inventory under this section. So you'll be able to see all your hosts, all your S3s and your RDS and almost everything that is in your environment from this inventory page. To make things a little more easier for everybody to follow along, we've actually color coded everything. So anything in red is something that should catch your attention right away, meaning that this is something that needs your attention and is not running as per expectation. Something yellow is, a priority too. And of course, anything in green is something that is just running out fine. So having said that, if we were the defenders in this page, we would have actually gone through as to what these red hosts are. So once we do get into that, you'd be able to see a couple of instances, a couple of hosts in your environment. So I think one would be Kali and the other one would be BTH Web App 2. Since both of these, are tagged as red, uh, a defender or an admin would actually investigate both of these as to why they are red. And of course, if you see, they also have a red security group, which would need investigation. So for the benefit of time, we are going to investigate BTH Web App 2, which is also tagged under red category. So we're going to see as to why the security groups are red. And once we do find that, we see that there are a couple of ports which are very, very commonly used, which is port 20 and port 80, which were actually open to the entire internet. Now, of course, I think there would be questions, and there have been questions in the past as to why I see an IP range here. In a real world attack, there would have been a 0.0.0/0, but Amazon pen testing policies actually don't allow us to have a 0.0.0 and pen test, and that was solely the reason why there's an IP here. But in general attacks that take place, there's going to be um, this is going to be open to the whole wide internet. So now,
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you mind just, I don't know if it's just on my screen or other people's as well, but it's a bit tricky to see the resolution on your desktop. Do you mind just zooming in a tiny bit? Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that will, even if it makes it more difficult for you, even one less on 80% was great. Thank you.
sure. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for pointing this out. I hope it makes a little more sense now.
No, amazing. Cheers.
Yeah. So we were actually looking into BTH Web App 2 as to why this was tagged under red. And there was a security group, and if you actually click on it, you'd be able to see the security group details. And port 80 and port 22 are actually open for the whole wide internet. And that is the reason that would have actually tagged this instance BTH Web App to be suspicious. So so if you're able to view BTH Web App 2 information, can we quickly get a yes from everybody and check if we have everybody with us?
Yeah, I can see a few people have turned the green tick off and back on again. Thank you for that, guys. Oh, yeah, we've got Peter and Bahar. Are you getting on okay? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. I just can't see the thumbs up and stuff because I'm on my mobile.
Ah, fair play.
Yeah.
No, I understand. Thank you for letting us know. No, that's great.
Yeah.
No problem, guys.
I'm sure. I think everything looks good. So of course, at this point in time, we have actually tagged BTH Web App 2, that is our host, to be suspicious, solely because there are two very, very commonly used ports, port 80 and port 22, which are open to the whole wide internet. Now, having this information as an admin, I would actually want to investigate further and go into further details as to what IAM roles and what are actually attached to this BTH Web App 2. So to check as to what roles and what policies are actually attached to BTH Web App 2, we're going to head out to IAM visualization. So this is the spider diagram, which has been tremendously useful for people to investigate as to what their IAM posture really looks like. So using the top bar here, you can actually navigate through what you would want to see under this. So so of course we are going to investigate BTH Web App 2 because we tagged that as suspicious. So I'm going to check that. I also want to check as to what users or roles or groups are attached to it. So I'm also going to check this and click on OK. Let me go back to my own stack. Perfect. So once you have this formulated, which is sort of a spider diagram, to understand what each of these really mean, you have the legend onto your left. So you can actually click on this and check as to what each of these icons mean. So today we are going to investigate an EC2 instance. So the EC2 instance in the diagram looks something like this. And we also want to find out as to what roles are associated with this EC2 instance. So these are the two icons to keep an eye for. And this is exactly what I'm going to do. So if I see there are two EC2 instances, so I'm going to check and click on BTH Web App 2 because this was something that was tagged as suspicious. So I actually want to check as to what roles are attached and what privileges it has. So just looking at it is actually attached to Lambda and IAM, which are pretty dangerous to have. So now with Optix, you also have the ability to check whether this particular role is overprivileged or not. So it is as simple as sliding this on. Hmm. So this should actually tag this as overprivileged, but my apologies. I think this actually needs 48 hours for this to sit through. So I think this environment hasn't been provisioned for 48 hours, but I think a lot of other environments should be able to see the information right away. Just a quick second. Training number 6129.
It's yours, Gennaro. Hope you got it right.
BTH Web App 2.
Perfect.
Oh, basically, since it hasn't sat on for 48 hours, which it should have, that was the sole reason. But otherwise, it actually reports this particular BTH EC2 role as overprivileged. So you can actually slide this, and this role is then tagged to be overprivileged. And you can actually check as to why this was overprivileged, because this has access to IAM and Lambda. But unfortunately, this hasn't been used for past 12 months. So Optix tags any role which hasn't been used for the past 12 months, the permissions which haven't been used for the past 12 months, to be overprivileged. So we could have actually seen that this was something suspicious, and BTH EC2 role was suspicious to say, because the overprivileged, because it actually showed out the overprivileged slider. So having this information, there's another thing that actually makes a lot of sense to go through, is the activity logs. So Sophos Optix uses their own AI model to actually tag high risk events. So what I really mean by that is, if you actually uh, click on all, you'd be able to see that there are some 96,870 events in total. And Optix helps you in recognizing on what those high risk events are. So I'm going to put that to 1 week again, and we're going to check on what the high risk events would be. So these high risk events are basically tagged using Optix AI. So if there has been any unusual login, so if suppose the company is located in suppose UK, and there has been an unusual login from suppose India, it would throw out a console login high risk errors, because this is an unusual console sign in login. And a quick minute for this to update. We would go to host. So this basically gives out all the anomalous activities that have taken place over a past a few days. And I would actually want to point out on the fact that since I have so many accounts running, it actually becomes a little difficult for me to check. Let's put as 1 week, and storage. So I'm actually looking for a create bucket policy, which should have been tagged in the under the anomalous events in your own particular accounts. So once you actually look into it, it will once you drill down using the plus icon, you'd be able to see that an anomalous S3 change had taken place, which was the policy change that we changed from version V1 to V3, which has actually taken place, which has been tagged as which had been actually tagged as an unusual or an anomalous activity.
Radhika, sorry to interrupt. We've got a good question from James here regarding these high risk activities. If an event is flagged up as high risk, but actually it's a false positive, and you want to whitelist that detection, is there the ability to do that from here within Optix?
So this is actually just to let you know that this has been a high risk event. This actually does not show out any alert to say. but we cannot actually go ahead and whitelist any of it. This is just to put that as a base to start off investigation from. So if you're looking for any anomalous activity, this is going to be the place. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. So with that, let's with looking at inventory section, let's look at how the policies are really structured. So okay, and there we go. So with Optix, you have out of the box policies, which are the the general benchmarks that we actually see. So it could be you know a CIS benchmark or a FedRAMP or so all the possible benchmarks are already available into Optix. And we also have custom policies. So custom policies are basically the customized out of the box policies that we create out of the base rules. So for the benefit of this class, we've actually created a custom policy called BTH class. So can you please help us to check whether all of us are able to, you know, report through and check whether we have BTH class in their custom policies? Can you please help us with a check mark? So are there any questions that we can take at the moment?
I think we're good. I'm just responding to James's question now, but I think otherwise we look okay.
Perfect. So so these are basically all these policies. The BTH class policy should also be tagged under your own environments. We have the ability to provide compliance tags to them, so which is BTH 00 tag and so on and so forth. And we also have the ability to enable or disable any policy, or adjust its criticality level. So this makes it easier to customize policy according to your own environments. So for the benefit of today, we actually have some policies pre-created for you. So the first one is, of course, AR601. So this was to ensure that a log metric filter alarm existed for unauthorized API calls. So we should always have this alarm in place in AWS, because if this policy was enabled and if this alarm had been in place, it would actually have alerted the admin in Cloud Optix of the privilege escalation that was taking place. So whenever you're working with Optix and AWS, it's always good to have this to just to make sure that the unauthorized API calls are actually create an alarm. And today we're going to do exactly that. So apart from well, the other policy which would have actually prevented such an attack was AR1010, which is basically least privileged review user principles, which actually is a rule that would have flagged of any IAM users or groups if they had any IAM set default policy version. This rule would have been tagged. So if you remember, we had BTH Lambda user policy, which had IAM set default policy version enabled. So if you actually had this rule in place, it would have tagged an alert in Cloud Optix, and it would have actually prevented the privilege escalation from taking place. The next policy that we have enabled, especially and that the defender, if they had enabled, was to ensure that a log metric filter alarm existed for S3. So it would actually raise out an alert for any S3 bucket policy changes. So if you remember, we actually changed the bucket policy from version V1 to version V3, which actually gave access to the entire environment. So this could have had been a great last line of alerting to indicate what the how the hackers are actually trying to access this resource. So the other one is AR154, which would have it is always good to have alerts for S3 buckets which do not have logging enabled. So why is this crucial? Of course, this is because it is crucial in forensics perspective. So after the attack had actually taken place and we had this in place, we could have actually traced back on what the attack really looked like. So good to have AR 154 in your environment as well. And also, uh, if you remember in our attacker portion that we ran yesterday, the IAM policies were attached to a Lambda function, which shouldn't have been in the very first place. So this policy, had it been in place, it would have alerted us of the fact that there is an IAM policy that is directly attached to a Lambda, and it is not directly attached to a group or role. So another great policy to have in place. And of course, I think this was this one, if this had been flagged, uh, I don't really think that the attack would have taken place, because remember in policy, while we were running the attacker portion, uh, the uh, the attacker actually found a policy version which has a star star star, which means it has access to the entire internet, and it has access to the entire capital 2 environment. So having this in place would have actually alerted us that this particular function has a star privilege. So these, for the purpose of today's Defender portion, had these policies either as part of custom policies or as part of out of the box policies. If they would have been enabled, this would have tagged an alert to us very early on, as early as when the policy versions were actually created. So that is an important point to note. You can actually stop an attack such as this at very early stage, having had an information that we have now. So let's go to a reports section and check as to what policy, what drifts have been detected against the policy that we've configured. So let's go to analyze and reports and filter based on BTH class and click on OK.
Sorry, Radeep, just a quick question from James. And I was sort of teasing him by saying we'll kind of cover this in more detail as we go. But one of the questions, I guess, is about the difference between sort of read-only information that's being presented, so alerts based on the API available in this case within AWS, and actual remediation. So using write permission to actually make changes. So essentially, we're talking about guardrails there, right? Can you talk briefly? I don't know if it's covered in this course, in which case apologies if you're going to get to this later on, but I guess it might be worth telling people on the call about the stuff that we can do to respond to the alerts that have we've been notified to.
Of course. So let me cover that really quickly. So you can actually add remediation. So once you do add an environment, there are remediations for S3 and IAM that you can add on to. This requires another set of privileges for you to, of course, the right privileges that you mentioned. for you to actually go ahead and remediate the resources themselves. Apart from that, what we have been doing constantly is to provide, flexibility of auto remediation. So apart from the guardrails that Nick just mentioned, there's also we're also integrating with webhooks. Um so webhooks are basically are going to be an HTTP or HTTPS endpoints. So once an alert has been, it is under restricted access and should be GA'd pretty soon. So you should see that coming in couple of months. So we already have that in restricted mode. But what webhooks essentially are basically an HTTP or HTTPS endpoints where you can actually send all of your alerts of Cloud Optix into the webhook. Now, this webhook could also be a Lambda function, which could actually trigger a remediation based on the code that you have provided. Or you could also have in future attach alert as well as a payload for remediation. So you could actually send that payload across, and that could trigger a remediation for you individually as a customer. So, uh, so, so these are the three things on how we really tackle remediation. So I hope that that answers
Yeah,
the question.
that's really helpful, Radhika. Sorry for introducing a delay. I know you've got a lot of content you want to go through. I think the other thing that you just touched on there as well, which is also really useful, is the integration with, SIEM solutions with Jira and Slack and various other ticketing systems. So if customers are using some of those as part of their internal IT process already, I think you've already made a really good point, I think, which is even if you're not using Optix to directly remediate whatever the alerts have been detected, if you're creating a ticket in your IT process and your workflow to identify the alert, then I think that's where we would then investigate, or your IT teams would investigate and shut down those misconfigurations. Let's not forget that what Radhika was referring to there with regards to the web app being misconfigured within the AWS environment. Obviously, that misconfiguration in the real world, if that misconfiguration was made, we're not saying that a malicious actor or a cyber criminal would immediately make use of that vulnerable application. So if you then have an alert provided by Optix to the fact that you have misconfigured something, you then have the opportunity as part of your normal kind of workflow process to address that vulnerability and that issue.
Right. And also, I think there are two parts to a remediation, which could, of course, be an automatic remediation, which we spoke about right now, which was having webhooks and having guardrails and having automatic remediation built into. But the other kind of remediation is what we're going to see today. So under reports, if we go back to our policy name and click on BTH class, you should be able to spin out a report such as this. So let me check for my own one. Right. So what we are essentially going to do is, as we have discussed, we had policies configured, which so if you remember, these were the exact same policies which are called as BTH class. So these would of course tag alerts and would also make a report out of it with this policy name. So it really becomes really easy for you to check on if you want a consolidated report, you can actually check on here. If you want to look as to what the alerts are looking like, you can go here and you'd be able to see the same information. So coming back to the point where there were questions on remediation. So in a lot of places, we actually have remediation information available for the customer to practice through as to what the next steps should be. And we as a security company, we really do feel that it is always important to block something that is malicious, but a false positive remediation is also something that could stop a production environment. And for the same reason, we have remediation such as this that the customer could actually go ahead and follow through. So the Amazon doc links are provided right here. You can actually go and check them. And we are actually going to do that. So since this ensure a log metric filter and alarm exists for unauthorized API calls, so this has failed. So we are going to go back into our BTH class dot awsapps.com, which was the site yesterday, and we are going to implement all the remediations which Optix gave us. And once we did all the remediations, we are going to rerun the attacks to check whether the remediations that we have followed, until what point was the attacker able to get through. So the first part is, of course, to implement what Optix really, is pointing us to do. So here's where you go. bth-class-awsapps.com and management console. So I hope this is active for me just to check. Let me zoom that a little bit. All right, so this is this is active for me. Can you please help us with a tick sign if you've actually reached the AWS console? Because we're going to implement all the recommendations that Optix has spun out in our AWS console. So let us know if there are any challenges or if there's anything we can help with.
All looks good here, Radik. I know a couple of people aren't able to use the ticks because they're accessing Zoom from their mobile devices, but on the whole, looks to be pretty good.
Thanks, Nick. So of course, the recommendation that Optix really spun out for us was to really have a log metric alarm for an unauthorized API call. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a log metric filter alarm in AWS. So having logged on into BTH Web App Start service, please navigate through these services portion right here and check for CloudTrail. So CloudTrail. So of course, for creating an alarm, there are a few steps involved, which include creating a trail, creating a log group out of the trail, and once the trail and log group are created, we then apply filters onto that group of logs to filter out particular events, and based on that filter, we then create an alarm. So whenever there is an occurrence of the filter in the log group event, it then tags an alarm to the people that we configure. So this is actually in 3-step way. So the first step would of course be to go ahead and create a trail. So after navigating through services, CloudTrail, let's click on trail and create a new trail. So let's give it a unique name because it may not allow me for the master account to have a conflicting name. So I'm going to give that as trainer. Right. So for logfile SSE, we are going to disable this. Log file validation needs to be disabled as well. So having all these configuration done, we're going to go to the next place. What is important for us is to check insight events. So insight events are the events which actually tag unusual activities or errors and would have actually tagged on unauthorized API events as well. So very important to check if you have insights event turned on. Everything else remains the same on what other options that you would like to see. Just to check, inside events have additional charges that apply to it. So because they actually report on anomalies. So let's ensure that this is enabled and let's click on next. And let's create the trail. Can you please help us if there are any questions or any challenges in creating the trail, or if can you please help us with our tick mark, please, to let us know if everybody is on point with us?
I'm not sure on Radhika, Anil and Peter, but let's say no questions so far.
Perfect.
Oh, Peter there, thank you.
All right. So once we do have that, we need to configure a CloudWatch log group where all the logs are actually going to be accumulated off. So so let's go back to the trail that you've actually created. For me, it's called this. For you, it could be any other unique name. So let's go ahead, click on this, and create a CloudWatch log. So it needs to be a new log group because you're going to apply filter to this CloudWatch log group. Give it a descriptive name so that you're able to, filter out the log group name. And also an IAM role needs to be attached to it. I don't really have one existing, so I'm just going to put that as trainer IAM BTH. And we're going to click on Save Changes. It usually works faster, not sure. All right. With a trail created, we are actually done with the first part of it, which was to create a trail and which was to also create a CloudWatch log group. The second part is, of course, to create a filter as to what filter should be applied on this particular CloudWatch. So let's go back to services and let's type in CloudWatch again. So what we're essentially trying to do is we are going to create a filter out of the log group. So from the CloudWatch, let's go to log groups and trainer CloudWatch is what we are looking at. And under actions, we're going to create a metric filter. So select your own log group and create a metric filter out of it. And this is what the metric filter would look like. I'm going to paste that in the chat, which is actually going to filter out all unauthorized events. Just searching for the chat box and goes to everyone and there. So this is actually the error code, the unauthorized operation that Optix had prompted us to use. So we're going to use that as our filter pattern. such that uh, any CloudWatch log group, if anything with unauthorized operation is reported, this filter is tagged onto it. Please ensure that there is no space after this, after the curly brackets, because it wouldn't actually let you go through. So there needs to be no space after the curly brackets are off. And once you define the the metric filter, let's go on next. Enter just a filter name. So it could be anything from BTH class trainer event. So any unique name would be helpful. So you can actually create multiple filters under one metric namespace. So you can just have a common metric namespace as BTH, and we're just going to give this a metric name of unauth access attempt. The metric value that we're going to give out is 1. What it really means is, as soon as even one event occurs, which has unauthorized operation as the filter pattern, as soon as this error code is matched in our CloudWatch logs, it should tag this. So this is how the metric value would be essential. And right, and click on next. And with this, you should be able to create a metric filter for your unauthorized operation. All right. So having created an unauthorized unauthorized operation filter, you would of course have to alert somebody that this filter has been caught into your AWS environment. So our next step would of course be to go ahead and create an alarm out of it. So before that, are there any queries, any questions, or anything we can help with?
Looks fine this side at the moment, really. Thank you.
Sure. All right. So once the next step would of course be to go ahead and create an alarm out of it. So to create an alarm, just check this box right here and go ahead and create an alarm from this place. So this makes it a little easy for an admin to create an alarm out of this filter pattern versus creating an alarm from this place. It's the same thing, but this is an easier way out. So of course, let's click on the checkbox right here and create an alarm. All right. So we actually have, just to check, we actually have created alarm out of the namespace of PTH and with and the metric name which was unauth access attempt. So so now we're going to give out the conditions on when this alarm should sound off. So the conditions would of course be even if there is one occurrence of the filter, it should immediately sound off an alarm. So just to draw your attention, it is greater than. So greater than 0 would of course be 1. So 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So it should tag an alarm as soon as even one event occurs, and that's how we gave out 0 here. And let's click on next. So here's the place where we actually give out the email addresses for people, and we're actually creating an SNS topic so that whenever the alarms sound off, they should go to these selected people. So let's create a new topic. And note that the topic must be unique. So let's have an auth trainer. Wow. Trainer attempt. So this is just a topic that should be unique, and here we give out the email addresses. So you can actually give out any random email address, or you can give out the email address that has been provided to you in the email for credentials, but just for the purpose of it, test@gmail.com. So what it essentially means is whenever the filter hits, whenever the alarm is sounded off, it is going to send out a notification to test@gmail.com. This will of course only happen once test@gmail.com subscribes to the SNS topic that you have created. So that is another step that would need to be done from this particular email account, and click on next. Alarm for anauth. Anauth. And click on next. And just review through as to what this really is. What is a metric used, conditions, actions, and so on and so forth, and create an alarm. So this actually, this is the first remediation that we have implemented from Sophos, Cloud Optix. So now let's go back to our Optix and check as to what other remediations has Optix spun out for us, and how we can implement those and really clean up things in Sophos, in AWS console. So any challenges or any questions that we can take would be really nice. Also, if everybody could help us with a tick sign, that would be great, to let us know that all of us are with us at the moment.
Yeah, I can see everyone flashing away. That all looks good, Radhika.
Awesome. All right. With having created a log metric filter alarm for unauthorized API calls, you can similarly create a log metric alarm for S3 bucket policy changes, which is the exception that your metric filter would then change and would then be for your S3 policies only. So of course, that is something that could also be done. So now we are going to move towards IAM permissions, and we're going to move towards cleaning up the IAM permissions in the environment. This usually gets failed, but again, the environments haven't sat down for enough time. But this is essentially the rule where we discuss that IAM set default policy version, should this flag shouldn't be set on any policy, because it may escalate to privileges. And we are going to do exactly that, and we're going to clean up our uh, IAM cleanup into our into our AWS accounts. So let's head back to our services and let's go to IAM. Once we do reach this point, let's go to the roles. Let me log back in. and management console. Let's go back to services. We go to IAM. And from IAM, we go to roles. And from there, we go to BTH EC2 role. So as we already saw in Optix, BTH EC2 role was something that was tagged as overprivileged. So it was tagged as overprivileged because there were a couple of permissions that hadn't been used by this role at all. So according to AWS's least privilege principle, we're going to take these couple of privileges out of this policy, basically because it has been tagged as overprivileged and hasn't been used by the person for a very long time. So how are we going to do that? Under roles, BTH EC2 role, and then we go to BTH EC2 role policy and click on permissions. So on permissions, we then click on JSON and we click on edit policy. In JSON again. So we're going to take out a couple of permissions that shouldn't have been there in the first place, which was to get account settings and IAM list roles. And remove the comma out of it as well, because the JSON does not allow a comma after the last policy object. So once you do that, let's click on review policy and save changes. So this was the first policy cleanup that we actually did based on the overprivileged principles that Optix had given us. The other recommendation was to not have multiple versions of policies lying around. So what we're going to do is you're going to filter policies and use customer managed and search for BTH Lambda user policy. So if you really had the least privilege rule from Optix, it wouldn't actually have allowed and would have tagged this particular policy version that has been created, because it has a star privilege. So it would have tagged in Optix and you could have actually deleted it. So we are going to do exactly that. So as attackers yesterday, we actually changed the versions from a version v1 to v3, simply because it had entire access to the environment. So as part of the recommendation from Optix that you should never have a star in your AWS account, we're going to clean that up. So we're going to examine all the policy versions onto which one suits us the best, and for us for just the purposes of today, we are going to choose policy version v4. And once we do that, we first have to click on v4 and set that as default. So once that is default, all the policy versions should then be deleted so that none of the attackers can then take advantage of it. So let's go ahead and delete those. So right, so using the recommendation that there should be least privilege for the particular role, we are going to tag that BTH Lambda user policy, and we are going to remove the we're going to remove the permissions out of it. So here's what I was pointing at, that ensure IAM policies that allow star administrative privileges are not created. So you can see that the BTH Lambda user policy is being tagged, and this is the exact policy that we have. Right. This is the exact policy that we did IAM cleanup for. So this has been tagged, and we removed version V1, V2, V3 of it, which had star privileges into it. So this actually completes our second part of cleanup, which was to clean up our Lambda, which was to clean up our IAM users and roles. Any questions, Nick, that we see online, or anything that that would need assistance?
No, I don't think so. Neil's given us some useful feedback, just in that he had to nip and answer the door, and he's fine, but there could have been an important bit being covered at the time that he missed. So maybe just a bit of feedback about having some workbooks or like a PDF guide on this process, so that people can refer back to it as well. But we can take that offline. So thank you for the feedback, Neil. That's very useful. But no, on the face of it, everyone else, everyone seems to be doing really well.
Sure. I think it looks like it. So any questions, please feel free to put that in chat. So Nick would be really happy to help out in that case. And so having the second part of cleanup being done and the remediation done, we are now going to follow up with the third part, which was to, actually clean up Lambda application. So, so here Optix actually gives us that IAM policies should only be attached to groups and roles, but in the in capital 2 environment place, this was actually attached to a Lambda function. So if you actually go ahead and click on more details, you'd be able to see that this this Lambda user has been tagged. So this has been tagged because the IAM policies are not attached to group or role. They're actually attached directly to a Lambda function, which should have been in the first place, and that's how this gets tagged. You can actually drill down and check what each of these really is, what's the ARN, and what how is the password change. So there's a lot of information available if you do a plus sign here. So using this recommendation from Optix, we're going to follow up for this stack set BTH Lambda user, and we're going to do exactly what it says, that there should be no policy attached to it. So let's head back to our AWS console. So there we go, and we type under all services, let's type out Lambda. So under Lambda, let's go to applications. And let's actually select stackset BTHC classroom. BTH. So remember in the Optix console, we had BTH Lambda user being tagged. So of course we are going to look into BTH Lambda user, because that was the exact username that was tagged, and it said that the IAM policies are not attached to a group or a role. So we're going to investigate BTH Lambda user policy, and we're going to detach it from our Lambda function. because of the same reason that Optix recommends, that it should actually be attached to a user role. So we're going to go ahead and detach that. And now we're going to go back to the same place, and we are going to we are going to remove the hard-coded EC2 instances, the environment variables, which shouldn't have been left there in the very first place. So under the same applications, stackset BTHC classroom, you'd find BTH Lambda function. So please go ahead and click on that. And let's click on the environment variables and remove both of these. So this actually successfully, we've completed our phase 2, which was to remediate according to the according to the policies that we had configured and according to what Optix had actually recommended us to do. So this actually completes our defender portion, because we've been really good defenders. We've followed along, and we've followed along the advice and recommendations that Optix had spun for us. And now, of course, the last part is to go through and rerun the attacks. So before we do that, are there any questions that we can probably take?
Sorry, Radhika, I was just muted. There's just the one actually, just one question from Neil regarding the piece you've just done. So once you've changed the settings, would you essentially need to do would it do an immediate refresh regarding the alerting, or would we need to wait for Optix to do a new scan essentially?
Right. So this can actually be done from your environment. So once you go back to your environment, you'd be able to see sync and scan in this environment. So once you do kick that off, it is going to scan again and check for the policies. So this can of course be done immediately, and you can also, you can adjust your scan frequency if you like, but for on-demand scan, yes, this could be done from your environments page right here.
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick, and thank you, everybody. I think this was amazing, because we actually have completed the remediations that Optix had spun for us. Now this brings us to the part where we are actually going to run the attacks. So so I think we do have a lot of time on hand, so we can actually go ahead. If you go ahead in your AWS console, which is going to be BTH, the same link that we were at, and let's go to EC2. So we're essentially rerunning the attacks after the recommendations that we followed from Optix, and we're going to see as to which point we are going to run through. So of course, ensure that you have Oregon region selected and no other region, because all the machines have been deployed under this. And let's go to instances. And Kali Linux, because remember yesterday, Kali was the place where we launched all our attacks from. So Kali is the place. BTH Web App 2, of course, the public IP might have changed, so you would need to make a note of this public IP. We are not going to run all the tasks, but having followed through the recommendations, we're just going to see as to what point does an attacker really reaches through after it has followed the recommendations from Optix. So I'm just quickly going to note down the public IP for my BTH web app 2, because if you remember, we actually variabilize it. So go ahead, click on BTH web app 2 and note down its public IP, which is 52.10.91.11. So I'm going to go back to my Kali Linux machine and we're going to click on connect. Ensure that you have the username of admin and go ahead and click on connect again. All right, so if you remember, our first task was to variabilize our target IP. So I'm going to do exactly that. You're free to follow along, or you're free to just watch as to till what part our attackers really reached. So first part was to variabilize our target IP. So I'm going to do just that. So my target IP is 52.10.91.11. Just checking if it has been variabilized correctly, and there we go. IP. All right, this looks good. Let me quickly run task 4A. So of course, the port 80 and port 22 would of course be open. So I'm not going to run those tasks again. So the vulnerability of SSRF still exists because we do not have any firewall or we do not have anything which would actually stop the port or which has anything which is sort of a WAF configured. So an SSRF vulnerability still exists. So we're going to use and see whether the vulnerability, whether we can get hold of the role name. And thank you for the feedback yesterday. We did get a really good feedback on how to differentiate the role from the prompt. So that was great, and thank you so much. So BTH EC2 role is the role that we discovered as of yesterday. And then we're going to move into getting credentials of and outputting it into the output.txt file. So there we go. BTH EC2 role. I hope I'm correct. Yeah, BTH EC2 role, and we output that into output.txt. And there we go. So this is essentially what we've done. Again, we have we did exactly the same steps that we did yesterday because you're able to get through SSRF and get the secret key access, key ID and token associated with this role name. And then we move on to cat task 4C. So this task was essentially to variabilize everything that we have just received out of the output.txt file. So I am going to do exactly that. Now the reason why I am feeding in the new credentials is of course the token would have expired by today. So for the same reason, we were searching for permanent credentials in the environment. So there we go, secret key. And token. I am going to remove the previous credentials that we had outputted from yesterday because the tokens would have, of course, expired. And now, having removed yesterday's credentials, I'm going to put out the credential, these access key ID, secret key, key and token into the AWS credential file. So for that, I'm going to quickly run task 5. Right. Just to make sure everything should be in order. So there. Access key ID, secret access key, region, output. Region, output, and session token. So then we actually checked as to where this role was attached, and we would still be able to check. And as of yesterday, we found that this role was not attached, and we also got an access denied for S3, which was a bad news yesterday, and still is. But here's where it gets interesting. So once you cat task 6b, where we were to check. So I'm going to skip to using the JSON format. So here's where it gets interesting, because now you don't really have hard-coded EC2 instances, hard-coded EC2 credentials into your Lambda function. So if not further, the attacker would actually have had stopped here. And if you also remember, we also changed the, even if the attacker was able to get through to this point, uh, they wouldn't have been able to carry on the entire attack, because remember, we also removed the policy versions, uh, which actually led to privilege escalation. So congratulations, everybody. This actually brings us to the end of our defender portion. And like yesterday, it was great because we were successfully able to run through our defender, and this actually makes the attacker quite sad. So this is how the hacker would actually feel after he has run the attacks of what we really did. Now, of course, there would be questions on, what can I do to really stop attacks from even happening at very, very early stage? So here's where we go. So the attack kill chain is very similar of what we discussed yesterday, which was scanning the cloud service and exploiting VM, exploiting the metadata, finding the policy, and exfiltrating the data in the end. Now, this attack could actually have had stopped if there was a way to put put conditions and put a WAF for port 80 and port 22. So how could you actually do that? You can actually have port control using XG firewall. You can actually see which ports are open, because that information was visible from the security groups, if you remember, the red security groups, which actually showed that port 80 and port 22 were open. So having XG firewall in front of your infrastructure would have been excellent. Um, if there would have been WAF and IPS, they would have detected such a brute force or such an attack really taking place using your XG firewall. The last line of protection could, of course, be server protection, which uses intercept X, and which could not just have prevented an attack like what we discussed today. It actually prevents a lot of other type of zero-day attacks and ransomwares and crypto mining attacks. So very useful to have a Sophos server protection. And just for the benefit of information, server protection, intercept X with advanced licenses also helps you to get optics functionality, limited optics functionality, but you actually get optics along with advanced server license. So that is a great thing to have if you have a server protection advanced license. Um, and you can actually, detect on-box movement on how the attack took place using EDR and MTR. And if we really had the recommendations from Optix that we discussed today, which was to implement least privilege and a least privilege access, and there should be no policy, no version that should have a star privilege. So if those policies would have had been in place, they would have tagged an alert into Optix and would have had helped us in mitigating such an attack. And so having a wholesome protection from different components, such as an XG firewall, a server protection, and optics all together talking to each other and working, would have had prevented an attack such as this, and also the attacks to come in future. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for attending both these sessions yesterday, which was the attacker session, and also today, which was being the defenders. So over to you, Gennaro.
Perfect. No, thank you. And thank you so much for running through that with us, Radhika. I suppose from my end, definitely interesting to see, the risk of those misconfigurations on cloud services can definitely open us up to, a number of different exploits. So being able to detect them early on and being able to do something about them is, of course, going to be critical. So it was very good to see that on both ends in terms of, being able to exploit some of those AWS services, but then also using, things like Cloud Optix to detect those misconfigurations and do something about it. I think also, in terms of how Sophos can align, to the different aspects of the kill chain to mitigate some of those vulnerabilities, I think is also key. So very interesting from my side, and again, definitely want to thank everyone for joining yesterday and today. As mentioned at the beginning of this call, there is a feedback form that we would really much appreciate you guys filling out. So what I'll quickly do is I'll just share my screen, and there we go, share. Oh. So you should be able to see a QR code on screen. I'll just make that bigger in just a second, because I've also got where is the chat window? I've also got so I've just posted the link in the chat window. If you guys do want to do it on your mobile devices, then please do scan this QR code. Again, would very much appreciate your guys' feedback on these sessions. Once you've completed the feedback form, then I think we're all good. I think we can then close down and give you guys some time back on this Friday. But again, thank you very much, Radhika, Nick. Thank you so much for being on hand to support with those questions. It was an awesome session. Definitely learned a lot myself. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I echo that. Thank you, Gennaro, and thanks Radhika. I think that's really useful. I'm always really impressed with you putting in so much work into these sessions. I know you're 5.5 hours ahead of us as well, so this is eating into your Friday evening. So thank you very much for your time. No
worries. It's always good to have everybody on board with us. And thank you, everybody, again, for taking out time out of your calendar. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Then, sorry, guys, it's marketing here, as always. My name is Michael. Just so you know, as everybody knows, they should have received a box of some cocktail ingredients over the past few days. And we should have our hosts for that joining us hopefully in the next 15 minutes. We ran through this a little bit quicker than planned, so I've just given them a call to see if they can join a little bit earlier. So if once you've filled out the feedback form, if you want to quickly grab your ingredients along and get ready for that, then we can get going. And also feel free to put your cameras on. Let's get a little bit social and enjoy.
Cheers, Mike. Yeah, just while everyone's sorting that out as well, I wanted to recognise that Radhika obviously at some point disappeared for her Sophos blue t-shirt on. Well done, mate. Living the values. I like it. So it's just Dale from our end letting us down now. He has got a Christmas jumper on though, to be fair.
Thank you for kindly calling me out, Nick. Mr. Ross, and yeah, for the benefit of everybody, I have my Coca-Cola Christmas is coming Christmas jumper on to get into the Christmas spirit.
Good stuff. I'm just going to quickly dash down and get my stuff from the fridge as well, if that's okay.
I'm going to do the same, so I'll stick myself in mute and turn the video off for a minute, and I'll be back with you soon.
And for those still here, I've just got confirmation that we can move that forward slightly. So we should have the chaps from Madam Geneva and Jen joining us shortly.
I think it also works out quite well, Mike. A little bit of a break, grab all the ingredients, get ready. I think the last cocktail mix and that I was on, I spent quite a bit of time just hunting around for a lime and being able to cut that up in time. So I think the spare time is definitely going to be appreciated.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to go and grab my stuff now too.
Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now. I'm assuming that everyone's got the QR code, but if they don't, please do shout out in the chat and I can ping that back up. Otherwise, the link to the survey is in the chat, so you can do it straight from your browser. If you are having any issues with the feedback form, then again, please do reach out and let us know.